Hello, it's time for another video in this series about Roman noble families. And today we are talking about Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus and the family of Pompeii. And this is kind of special person in the Roman history as well, because we know so much about him compared to the many other individuals of that era. And that's why it's very common that the person's fame and life and deeds overshadow the importance of the family behind him. So I will start here by first going through overview of the Pompeii family, and then I will discuss more about the family of Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus himself, and then I will proceed giving an overview on the marriages of Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, because he had 5 of them, and they are actually quite instructive in regards of how many different kinds of motivations there are in noble family marriages of Rome. Overview about the Pompeii family, and this is quite different from the old noble families like Claudii Pulchri or even plebeian nobility of like Caecili Metelli, for example. They are plebeian family, and they have been at consular level from 141 before Christ, and that makes them quite recent addition to the republican elite, really. They don't have many generations of consuls to go by. And they were originally from Picenum area of Italy, and actually that's the only family we know that has risen from that area and become prominent in Rome. And it's quite far away from Rome as well, compared to the other original families. And it tells a lot about how when Roman Republic grew in importance in the Mediterranean, how the wealth and culture spread throughout Italy, and how the Rome kind of was managed to lure in the local elites into Rome and take part into the power struggles inside the city of Rome. And they are very much known to have a very large clientele in Picenum area, and even as much that they could raise a couple of legions of soldiers that were personally loyal to the Pompeii family. So it was very influential, very rich family, obviously, in the area, and it's quite possible that they wanted also influence in Rome to be able to protect their own interests in their strong area. And Pompeii is a family with 2 main branches, and we will go through them next. And I would say that one of the distinctive traits of this family is that there is a low family cohesion, and maybe this reflects the provincial origins of the family somehow. And the consular branches I mentioned, there are 2, and they are Pompeii Rufii and Pompeii Strabones. And as we can see, Pompeii Rufii were originally the first one to gain consular level, and Pompeii Strabones came after that. And here Pompeii Strabones actually include Pompeius Strabo and Pompeius Magnus both. And we don't know exactly how these branches were related to each other, but I think the evidence suggests that they are related and not that far away from each other in the bloodline. We just don't know what's the connection between them is. Here is the overview of the family tree, and as you can see, there are these 2 branches that are not connected, and then added to those there are also quite a number of individuals whom we do not know exactly where they fit into this chart. And this already reveals how large family we are talking about. And I think that the branches of the family and the numerous individuals we know in them indicates that the family is still quite old locally, even though it wasn't present in Rome really before 140s, really, at least that we know of. So I think this is large local family that has gathered wealth and influence locally, and then moved on into becoming a power player in Rome as well. But let's go deeper into these branches, and we will take first the older branch, so to speak. And here you can see that the first consul of the family, consul 141, Quintus Pompeius, he was also elected as censor. And I think as a person he is quite interesting. His story is quite interesting because he was very convincing public speaker, and he was able to gather quite a support from the crowds in Rome. So it was definitely popularistic strategy in that sense, even though politics might be combination of conservatism and populist ideas. But in any case, he was a very good speaker, and he was very popular, and he even got away with some mistakes in his career because he was so much beloved by public. And I think what's remarkable here is the achievement that you are a novus homo, a new man in Rome, which means that nobody else in your family has been a consul before. And you are the first consul, and also you will be elected as a censor, and that's a rare thing to happen. It doesn't happen often at all. And also he was able to get his son, Quintus Pompeius Rufus, to be elected as a consul in 88, alongside with dictator Sulla. And this, of course, already tells you that how they have chosen their side in the civil war. And there are some, let's say, rumors that father or grandfather of Consul of 141 was actually a flute player, an entertainer, and not really even a serious politician. Well, it might be not, but certainly if he was, then his talents in stage probably were put into very good use by his son to gain that popularity and rise into consular level. And otherwise, the family contains quite a lot of individuals, and we can see here some reach tribune level, some reach praetorian level, and they, I think, represent the kind of archetypical family that has risen from the outside Rome and came into Roman politics. So lots of low-level officials and careers ending quite soon, and few consuls here and there. But that, of course, doesn't diminish at all the value of the achievement of Quintus Pompeius. And as you can note, the Pompeius family didn't really use that much cognomina. There are a couple of ones in use. Bithynicus is one, and then there is Rufus. And Rufus usually means in Roman context that it's someone who has red hair. And we don't know this for sure, but perhaps the consul of 88 had red hair, and which would quite funnily put him close to dictator Sulla, who definitely had reddish hair. So in any case, that's the overall family branch here and the overall stories. As you can see, the contacts with Cornelius Sulla family are quite obvious here. and Quintus Pompeius Rufus having been co-consul with Sulla, and Sulla's daughter marrying Rufus's son, and then their daughter Pompeia actually marrying Julius Caesar, which is quite interesting because Julia Cornelia Sulla was also daughter of Julia Caesaris, and that's quite interesting feature there, and an example of this kind of circular marriage of Romans that I have been speaking earlier about, and definitely a sign how Julie Caesares really like to keep it in the family. Then let's see this other branch that has also consuls. And here the first consul of the branch is Cnaeus Pompeius Strabo. And as we can see, his son was this famous Pompeius, as we know from the history, Cnaeus Pompeius Magnus, 3 times consul and 4 times triumphator, which is quite an extraordinary achievement in Roman history. And then you have also Sextus Pompeius, that is cousin of Pompeius Magnus, and the offspring of Pompeius Magnus. And here you already can see the 5 marriages of Cnaeus Pompeius Magnus, which are central to this video as well, and the different branches of the family. What's interesting in the life of and making of the character of the Cnaeus Pompeius Magnus is that his father was this Pompeius Strabo, who during the civil war raised those legions and commanded them and made friends with Sulla as well eventually. And what happened during the civil war was that Pompeius Strabo was quite a long kind of undecided that if he wants to align with Sulla or Marius, and only when it became clear that Sulla was winning, then he joined Sulla's side, and even then he had quite of let's say slow pace of battles. And his son was in a very difficult position because as a consul of 98, Pompeius Strabo was ordered to release the command of those legions of his for the benefit of the consul of 88, who was this other Pompeius. And what happened was that this other Pompeius arrived into the camp of Pompeius Strabo and demanded the command for himself, and the soldiers of Strabo killed this other Pompeius and murdered him, really. And this was very, I personally think this is very strange episode in the family history, because what would have prevented them really sharing the command and having, peaceful relations with relatives, between relatives. What is the point of killing one Pompeius by other Pompeius? That really is a strange thing. And what Pompeius Strabo did after this, he resumed his command of the legions, and quite soon after that, at 87, he died in fever. So that there was some kind of disease spreading in the military camp. And this left his then 19-year-old son, Cnaeus Pompeius Magnus, as the head of family. So all these events happened in quite fast-paced way, and also left Cnaeus Pompeius Magnus into command and into responsibility for the whole family at a relatively young age, really young age. And nobody didn't really had much expectations about this young Pompeius Magnus and what he could do. I mean, such a young boy and there was civil war just had raged all throughout the Italy, and it sounds like quite a difficult position to start your career and life with. But Pompeius Magnus showed that he was up to the task and much more than to it. But more about that later. If you observe the family connections here, the already mentioned connections with Cornelii Sulle and Julii Caesares is one of the things. But you can also notice here in this branch of the Pompeii that there is quite a lot of connections with Licinii Grassii. And if you observe the other triumvir alongside Julius Caesar and Pompeius Magnus, Marcus Licinius Crassus, consul of 17 and 55, both times with Pompeius Magnus actually. He and his wife Tertula had a son who married Caecilia Metella, and they had a son whose offspring then married Pompeius Magnus' daughter. And also Pompeius Magnus married Caecilia Metella, who was originally wife of son of triumvir Crassus. So as you can already see, there are lots of connections between Licini and Pompeii, and also this kind of circular marriage arrangement there. And this also is true with Caecilii Metelli, which is not surprising because the Licinii Grassii are already mentioned here. And then they also have a contact with Claudii Pulchri and Cornelii Cinnae in the marriages. So as you can see, they were very active in the marriage scene, and of course here you have to understand that these are also the times that we know more about. So these weren't just nameless figures and in ancient history, but we have actually quite a lot of information of these individuals. So it's one way it's misnomer to say that we know so much about these or that we will look at these marriages and marriage arrangements as somehow exceptional. I think rather these represent the normality, the normal way of marriages, so that they were quite complicated and quite deep connections between families that you wanted to align with. I think this is really the most important aspect here, what we can learn about this family and this family tree. And then let's go in deeper into these marriages of Cnaeus Pompeius Magnus, because I think they tell a really interesting story. First of all, these marriages were Antistia was the first one, then came Aemilia Scaura, then Mucia Tertia, then Julia, and the last one, fifth, was Cornelia Metella. And even when these names are put here in this kind of order, I think there is a definite trend here, going from lowest to the highest in terms of prestige of the family, of the bride. And let's start with Antistia. And this is a quite interesting marriage altogether. And as I mentioned, the father of Pompeius Magnus died suddenly, and his son became at very young age the head of the family. And after this, the enemies of the Pompeius Strabo had a court case against young Pompeius for the embezzlement of the funds during the civil war. And this was very typical of Roman political court case. It was usual that when there was a weak moment in the family, the enemies would attack in courts and in politics and in every possible way to have to push them down. And this was especially inviting situation because you had a young and inexperienced head of the family and he was being put on trial on the deeds of his father, which, if you consider, that's a quite stressful situation. But it was not that bad for Pompeius Magnus. The judge in the trial was Publius Antistius, and during the whole trial he was partial to Pompeius. And we don't know exactly what was behind this partiality, but what we do know is that the Pompeius had promised to marry his daughter if he would be found as not guilty in the process. So the question is that why Publius Antistius would want his daughter Antistia to marry Cnaeus Pompeius Magnus. Antistius' family had been more established in Rome than the Pompeii family. That is a fact. They had marriage connections with Calpurni and also with Claudii Pulchrii. So they had kind of good connections already, but they weren't on the top really of the hierarchy, but at least higher than the Pompeii. So for Pompeii there was a clear motivation of social climbing here, and also to winning the court case in quite easy manner. But for Antistius, I think the motivation is more like having a rising star to align with, because Pompeius Magnus had already shown himself as a capable soldier, and he was the head of the rich Pompeii family in any case. And I think what really was the highest motivation for Publius Antistius to align with Pompeius Magnus was the fact that Pompeius Magnus was in so good relations with dictator Sulla. And I think Antistius saw this as a chance to gain his position near Sulla and align himself with the winner of the civil war. So it was kind of win-win situation for both families, I think. And it was no secret also during the time, because when the trial ended and Publius Antistius declared Pompeius to be not guilty, he was released from charges. The crowd in the courtroom started cheering that happy congratulations for marriage to the young couple and so on. So they made fun of the whole trial, and in certain ways it was just for the show and for the entertainment value. If you think that the starting motivations for the marriage weren't that let's say romantic ones, the marriage itself was quite happy, and there were no children, but also we don't hear anything negative about them. There were no stories about lovers or relationships with other people, so the chances are that it was actually a happy marriage against all odds. However, the marriage didn't last long. It ended a few years after divorce, and actually it was the dictator Sulla that ordered Pompeius to divorce Antistia and get married with Aemilia Scaura. And Pompeius resisted at first. He didn't want to divorce, but eventually followed the order of Sulla. And this gives you quite a brutal example of how marriages worked in those circles. Right before the divorce, the father of Antistia, the Publius Antistius, the judge, was killed by Marian supporters. And that, I think, was a family tragedy. Marians thought that Antistius was unreliable because he was so closely aligned with Sulla, and this ambition to align with Sulla family really got him killed. So it was kind of, I don't know if you can call it poetic justice or what, but it was quite harsh fate, I think. And when the divorce came, the mother of Antistia, Calpurnia, committed suicide as well. So he had lost marriage of her daughter and her husband, and then he killed herself. And as typical of Roman history, we actually don't know what happened to Antistia herself after this suicide of her mother. So all in all, I think there is great ingredients here for drama and dramatic fiction of this marriage. And I think the motivations of power and marriage and death that keeps coming up in this story are quite remarkable. And this is by far not the only case of deaths connected to marriages of Pompeius Magnus. Okay, that was the first marriage. The second marriage was with Aemilia Scaura, as mentioned. And behind of this marriage are actually death as well. The Grand Almoner of the Senate, Marcus Aemilius Scaurus, died in the year of 88. And this opened the road for Sulla to marry the widow of Scaurus, Caecilia Metella, who was daughter of Caecilius Metellus Dalmaticus. And Scaurus and Caecilia had a daughter between them before Scaurus died. And this daughter was Aemilia Scaura. And Sulla was now the stepfather of Aemilia Scaura, and according to the Roman tradition, father of the family is in charge of the family matters, like marriages, for example, and he had the actual duty to oversee her life and that she would make good marriage. The problem was that Aemilia Scaura was already married, and she was pregnant for Manius Acilius Galabria. But Sulla ordered her to divorce and to marry Pompeius Magnus. So Sulla actually forced both Pompeius and Aemilia Scaura to divorce their current spouses and marry each other. And both of them were unwilling at first, but eventually admitted to the will of Sulla. And what happened was that there was a wedding, and Pompeius and Aemilia were married, wedded, but when the time of childbirth came, Aemilia died during that. So it was a very short marriage. And within a couple of years of that, also her mother Caecilia and Sulla himself died. So if the first marriage was surrounded by death, also the second marriage was very much surrounded by death, and it was tied into the political necessities. If you compare the family stature of Antistia and Aemilia Scaura, Aemilia Scaura was obviously very much higher in the hierarchy of families. So it was a case for Pompeius Magnus also that he was advancing in the society. He was moving into higher circles here. Then the third marriage of Pompeius Magnus was with Mucia Tertia. And this was actually, I think, the most influential marriage that he made. And it also has its starting point in a death, because at 82, Gaius Marius Younger died, and a couple of years after that, Pompeius married his widow Mucia, and this happened almost at the same time that Caecilia, mother of Aemilia, died, and Sulla died quite soon after that. And Mucia was daughter of Quintus Mucius Scaevola, consul of 95, and Pontifex Maximus also, and her mother was Licinia, and Licinia Crassa. And Licinia remarried with Quintus Caecilius Metellus Celer, and here you can also see the influential families of Muci Scaevolae, Licini Crassi, and Caecili Metelli to be involved with each other again. And I think it really was Caecili Metelli who made the decision that Pompeius can marry Mucia. And at least it couldn't have been made against their will and against their support. And the family of Muci Scevole was a famous one in Rome. It was part of the plebeian nobility. They had many consuls, and they were known lawyers and students of law. And they also were a family that saw that their daughters were properly educated, and which means that they received very rich education in literature and as well as in law and philosophy. And this placed quite a few of the females of this family into influential positions during the end of the Republic. And Mucia was considered to be one of the most influential women in the history of Rome. And the reason why we don't know that much about her is because her name is not recorded in the official records anywhere. But there are quite a lot of stories and quite a lot of things what we can deduce about things that are told about her. And she was also the first Roman woman to have statue erected for her honor in Olympia in Greece, which was kind of high honor for any Roman or anyone from the classical world. And after they get married, Pompeius was quite a lot away from Rome at military commands between practically all the time between years of 76 and 61. And this was by Pompeius's own will. He wanted to have this kind of special military commands that were extraordinary. He didn't want to have an ordinary career in politics, for example. And while he was away from Rome, Mucia was his contact in Rome, official contact. And Cicero, for example, has said that if one wanted to have anything to be done with Pompeius, one had to talk Mucia first. That kind of was a gatekeeper to everything her husband did. And it really means that Mucia was, while she was in Rome and Pompeius was away, she was personally in charge of, actively in charge of political negotiations, and she made deals in the name of her husband. And this is a very powerful position, as you can imagine. She made decisions about Roman Republic on her own. Of course, I think she wouldn't have made decisions that Pompeius Magnus would strongly disagree. I think they had coordinated quite well what the positions were and how to play the game. And Mucia certainly knew how it was played, because she was connected to these important families through her own background. And through her education, she had the capability of doing these things. They had 3 children together, and by that, I think this marriage should be called as quite successful one. Interestingly, still, what happened that when Pompeius returned to Rome in 61, he divorced Mucia, and because Mucia was one of the lovers of Julius Caesar, which of course was a kind of arch rival of Pompeius when it comes to politics and influence. And I think this really actually hurt Pompeius somehow, because from this moment onwards, Pompeius nicknamed Caesar as Aegisthus. And Aegisthus is in Greek mythology a character who was a seducer of the wife of a king. And well, I think that this nickname was not a very kind one. There probably were also other motivations behind the divorce than just this humiliation from part of the Caesar, because this divorce broke the alliance between Pompeius and Caecilimetelli, And this alliance was already strained. It wasn't happy alliance at all, because Pompeius was scheming against Lucius Licinius Lucullus in order to get Eastern command of the Eastern War, and that was the really kind of point of disagreement between Pompeius and Caecili Metelli as well. And it might be that divorce was kind of relief for Pompeius, because he was then no longer constrained by the rules of alliance with Caecili Metelli. And what's quite funny is that Mucia remarried with Marcus Aemilius Scaurus, and that was the son of Scaurus and Caecilia Metella, and the brother of Aemilia Scaura, Pompeius' second wife. So if you divorce someone and then marry the brother of your husband's ex-wife, I think that's a clear insult. It was meant to be insult against Pompeius, and it probably was also quite stingy one. And I think this also kind of underlines the position of Mucia, because she really wasn't to be kind of put sidelined even after divorce to Pompeius. In fact, she could give back about this divorce to Pompeius by this new marriage. And Mucia was active in politics also after this event. For example, at the year of 39, when there was another civil war between Sextus Pompeius and Octavianus for power, people of Rome asked Mucia to negotiate a peace treaty with her son Sextus Pompeius and Octavianus. And actually this made her as the first woman in Roman history to had official position of an ambassador. She was a peace negotiator. Eventually Octavianus won that war, and after the war he still treated Mucia with respectfully, and didn't go after her and let her keep her position. So in many ways Mucia was very extraordinary woman figure in the history of Rome, because she had these honors. She was so active in politics as well, and if there were more sources about her life, I think we would see a lot more of her having an influence in the decisions of the Republic. Then the marriage that probably everyone knows about, the fourth marriage of Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, that was with Julia, the daughter of Julius Caesar. And her father was Caesar, and her mother was Cornelia Cinna. And Cinna had been one of the closest, probably the closest ally of late Gaius Marius, and also Cinna was four-time consul, so Cornelia Cinna did come from quite influential and prestige family. Cornelia, however, died when Julia was young, and it was Caesar's mother Aurelia who raised Julia. And then Caesar and Pompeius did have this interest of forming their alliance and also solidifying their alliance with marriage arrangement. And that's why Pompeius married Julia at the year 59. And what's interesting perhaps here is that Pompeius was 47 years old at this stage, and Julia was 17. So Pompeius was 30 years of his older. And Pompeius originally had wanted to marry the niece of Cato the Younger, but Cato had refused this. He didn't want to have anything to do with family, which probably was telling about character of both of these men. And that's why Caesar had his chance to have Julia married with Pompeius. And to make this union happen, Caesar annulled the engagement of Julia. Julia had been engaged to get married with Quintus Servilius Scipio Brutus, and everybody actually expected that marriage to happen. So this marriage with Pompeius Magnus was a surprise for the high Roman society. It was kind of a political masterstroke also from Caesar's point of view, and kind of way to turn the game for him. And if you consider the starting points of the marriage, age difference of 30 years and kind of forced way to make it happen because of the political expediency, I think the odds are that the marriage wouldn't be that, happy one. But it was actually quite very happy one and famously happy one as well. Marriage even changed Pompeius because Pompeius hadn't been interested in arts at all before this. But after the marriage, he became the patron of poets and even built a theater building in Rome. And this was because Julia was so much interested about poetry and theatrical arts. So, and there was even talk about that Pompeius didn't want to go to his provincial command because he wanted to stay in Rome with Julia. And there was a kind of mocking of Pompeius that he was so enchanted by his young wife that he started to oversee or bypass his official duties because of that. While their personal relationships were happy and harmonious and even perhaps could be termed as loving, there was tragedy related to children and pregnancy, because Julia was pregnant and then this was the time that there were a lot of street riots in Rome, and politics was quite violent in that time. And what happened was that one of the slaves of the household brought back home the blood-stained clothes of Pompeius one day, because there had been a riot and Pompeius had hurt himself a bit. But when the clothes were brought into the house, Julia thought that Pompeius had died, that it was total tragedy. And she fainted and had a miscarriage. In reality, Pompeius had been wounded just slightly and just had his stained clothes being sent back home and having a new fresh set of clothes for himself. So it was a tragedy and the loss of the first child. Julia became pregnant second time as well, and she died in childbirth, and also the child died shortly after this. So again, we see that death and marriages were quite close to each other in life of Pompeius Magnus. The death of Julia also meant that relationships between Caesar and Pompeius were to be cut, really. There was no connection between them after this. Caesar did try to marry the niece of his Octavia to Pompeius, but Pompeius refused this marriage deal. He didn't want to have anything to do with Caesar anymore. And there has been quite a lot of speculation and claims that this was the kind of the final straw that broke the camel's back and was igniting the civil war between Caesar and Pompeius. I perhaps wouldn't go that far. I think the civil war would have resulted in any case, because both Caesar and Pompeius were so determined to go on their own track and not to compromise with each other. So I don't think that even marriage with Octavia or that if Julia hadn't died in childbirth, that would have prevented really the civil war between those men. But I think this was also a very interesting marriage because it started from very political considerations, but then ended up being a famously happy one. Then the last marriage of Pompeius Magnus and was with Cornelia Metella, and this was quite interesting case as well. Cornelia had been the wife of the son of Marcus Licinius Crassus the Triumvir, and Crassus and his son were both killed in Parthian operation after the Parthians won the Roman army in battle, and so the wife of Crassus's son was available. And Cornelia was daughter of Quintus Caecilius Metellus Pius Scipio Nasica and Aemilia Lepida. So she was kind of combination of Caecili Metelli and Scipiones, Cornelia Scipiones. And she was born in the year of 73, and therefore she was even younger than Julia, even while obviously Pompeius was older, getting older. So it was very mismatched marriage when it comes to age of husband and wife. Cornelia Metella was very much educated, highly educated and skilled. She was even known to be to have as a hobby of geometry and philosophy. Subjects that really usually were privilege of the men of this time. So she probably was quite intelligent and at least highly educated. And what's interesting is that what accounts have been preserved to us tell that the marriage was a happy one, and that both parties really loved each other. And this seems to be kind of a recurring theme in the marriages of Pompeius Magnus, that he really had a way of making these marriages work, even though the starting points were anything but romantic in reality. And their marriage was quite short-lived because there was a civil war between Caesar and Pompeius, and Cornelia was sent into island of Lesbos with sons of Pompeius to be safe there. And while she was there, staying there, the inhabitants of the island raised a statue for her. So probably she either was good at advancing the interests of the islanders, or the islanders really wanted to be in the good graces with Pompeius Magnus. After the defeat of the Battle of Pharsalos, Pompeius retreated also into this island, and he and Cornelia traveled towards Egypt. And when they reached Egypt, Cornelia saw how Pompeius was killed on arrival. So it was a tragic one, and also there was a death in this marriage of Pompeius, but it was the death of himself this time. And what's interesting is that Cornelia seemed to have enjoyed a high level of protection in Rome when she returned there, even though her father, Metellus Scipio, was highly unpopular one, and one of the leaders of the Pompeian movement after the death of Pompeius himself. And I think when you look at these marriages, all five of them, you can see the wide amount of motivations and how marriages were connected to politics in very intricate and many layered ways. So it's not simply a matter of that, I will marry your daughter or your son's daughter and then we will be happy together in politics. No, it was much more complicated than that. And there was the elements of the social climbing, like each marriage of Pompeius was a step up in the ladder of the prestige. So he was very careful to choose brides that always led him into the higher excellence of Roman society. And I think that is really the background of his family and low status of his family originally. So he was always searching for ways to gain grounds and rise even higher in the hierarchy. Of course, there was immediate motivations like winning the court case that was very important for the young Pompeius to win, and quite opportunistic thing to do was to marry the daughter of the judge of the trial, to have it into his way. There was also forms of dynastic planning, as we see in the marriage arrangements of Pompeii and Julii Caesares and people around there. And what's I think is quite striking is that there was no kind of importance if people wanted to get married or not. If Sulla said that you are going to marry that one and divorce that one, then you will do it. There was no kind of question of it. But then again, Pompeius, when he was at the peak of his power, he could refuse the marriage proposal from Caesar himself, which is, I think, something that one wouldn't do very lightly. And also these marriages tell quite a lot about the role of women in the Roman society. The kind of invisible power that they held in many cases, and especially, for example, Mukia Tertia here is really good example of how women hold power, truly hold power, and had influence in the matters of state without having official elected positions for themselves. And I think this kind of arrangement is no surprise if you consider the methods of communication and the speed of communication in that times. If you were having a war command in some far off province, obviously you couldn't handle the everyday matters back in home. And who would you trust, and who had the most interest to be playing things according to your interests? I think the wife is very important element there. And this kind of similar importance we can see, for example, in the life of Cicero and his wife Terentia. And therefore I don't think it's a highly surprising one, but it's something that is quite often overlooked, and of something of which we don't have that much concrete evidence of. So I think here historians should be quite a lot more ambition to map out the real influence of the marriages and real influence of other families in the decision-making process of individuals, and how the matters of the Roman state were actually decided. And of course, these marriages are quite a show of the importance of the paterfamilias and the limits of his power in the society. If paterfamilias said that you must marry somebody for the benefit of the family, then you did it, and that's all. So that's also a very interesting kind of interplay between the benefit of the family and the will of the individual, and what were the limits there, and how it worked in practice. And also we can see here alliances and ill will between families. Generals like Sulla wanted to keep their closest lieutenants close, because that, I think, was the motivation for Sulla to order Pompeius to marry Aemilia Scaura. He wanted to keep Pompeius close to him, and it kind of almost reminds me of this, that keep your friends closer but your enemies closer kind of thing, because for Sulla, Pompeius was kind of difficult person to control, and I think he wanted to have leverage on Pompeius more, and that's why I demanded the marriage with Emilia. And political motivations of these families and individuals. Popularity played an important part here, and for example, Cato the Younger couldn't allow his relative to marry Pompeius because it would have eaten away the popular base of Cato himself in politics. And of course, it was a show of status. Man from the provinces, almost Pompeius Magnus, marrying into highest families with highest families of Rome. I think that was the show of status from Pompeius' side. And of course, there is a role of chance and things happening without planning in history, because the death of Julia, quite probably, even if it didn't cause the civil breaking out of the civil war, at least it removed one big obstacle there, one big stabilizing element there, and probably accelerated the birth of the conflict of the civil war. So I think what we learn here is that Roman marriages were very complex matters. They weren't as simply as, people get married and so forth, or they weren't about easy, simple tactics of politics. Instead, they were really kind of decades-long planning of cooperation between families and the building up the position of the family in the society, and also grabbing the opportunity when it presented itself, really. So I think this is the difficulty with Roman marriages, and the reason why it has been so difficult for us later on to kind of pin down and put a clear definition of what Roman noble marriage is and what it wasn't, because it could be so many things, and it could contain so many interests and even conflicts of interest inside it. And for example, Pompeius staying married with Mucia, even when there was clearly coming a breakup with family of Mucia, Caecili Metelli. And that's why there was these tensions and kind of keeping up appearances and everything. So it's a complicated subject, and I think we shouldn't at all doubt about the importance of the marriages in the noble spheres, because they tied families together for decades in terms of having children and offspring and influence on their careers and their decisions and everything. So I think this is one of the central aspects of understanding how the Roman politics even worked, because in order to make it work, you needed to have connections, you needed to have people supporting you and in various kind of roles and stages of life and stages of career. That's why I think we should focus more on the marriages of the families and try to find patterns and try to find reasoning why this marriage made sense to those people and what were the benefits really, what was the thinking behind of the marriage, than simply to say that, oh, they were also married with each other. So it's not something that you can wave off and as a side matter. It's really much the matter of importance here in the nobility and their competition for power. Okay, that was all for today, and I think the life of Pompeius Magnus really is a treasure trove when you want to understand the marriages, and it's also a very great source for I think hair-raising stories about marriages and death and politics and power play and everything inside the Roman nobility. I hope that we will see again with another topic and another video. Thank you.